Hello, welcome to the Get Lit Masterclass. My name is Jamie Pettis, and I'm a coach that helps women get back in control around their relationship with alcohol. This is video number 1, and today we're going to be talking all about why we overdrink and why it's so hard for many of us to quit. I want to encourage you to get out a piece of paper or maybe your phone or however you make notes, so that if there's something that's said today that really resonates with you or that you want to remember, or if you have questions that come up and you want to email me, please write them down and feel free to reach out either on my Get Lit Coaching Facebook page or at coachjamiepettis@gmail.com, and I'd love to hear from you. It is my intention for this video series, and even more so for this Get Lit community, to not only offer a lot of hope and inspiration if you are struggling right now, if you're feeling a little bit defeated, if you're feeling a little bit out of control when it comes to your relationship with alcohol. I want to let you know that this community is going to give you all of the support, the accountability, the tools and the practices and the information that you need to get on track and to get in control. Because truly, your drinking right now, it's not as much a problem as it is a pattern. And I can show you how to interrupt the patterns that are no longer working for you and help you develop a new path and a new way of being so that you can completely be free from these patterned ways of being that are just not helping you anymore. I want to just inspire you and give you a lot of hope today. And that quote there that says, "Often it's our deepest pain which empowers you to grow into your highest self," that was definitely the case for me. When I was struggling with my addiction to alcohol, it was a very deep pain. And I didn't know if there was going to be a way out. I couldn't see a good life on the other side. But I chose to look at it, to face it head on. And now, being on the other side, I have realized that it was absolutely this pain in my life that was the catalyst for helping me grow into a higher version of myself, to find even more joy, even more freedom than I would have had I not gone through and had these challenges with alcohol. So now I can look back and be really grateful and thankful for it. And I hope that you can have the same experience where you really can use this time and this struggle with alcohol as a catalyst for growth and for change and for creating more of all the good stuff in your life. Let's talk about why we love to drink. And the reality is, the reason why we overdrink is because we have created a lot of desire within ourselves for alcohol. The reason you overdrink has zero to do with your morality or your character or lack of discipline or self-control. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. The reason you overdrink has everything to do with the brain, and it's actually functioning exactly the way it's supposed to function. So let's dive into this. What's going on here is that we were born and grew up in a culture and a society that really almost worships alcohol. We glamorize it and we idolize it and we encourage alcohol consumption on every level. We grow up with commercials that inundate us with messages about how amazing alcohol is, how fun and glamorous and romantic it is. And then we also grow up around the adults in our life, for most of us, that drink on all occasions. And, it's a central theme for really everything. Our society is truly, we're obsessed with it. It's around for every occasion: celebrations, birthdays, weddings, get-togethers, wine tastings, sporting events, concerts. I could go on, but it's literally everywhere. And if you don't believe me, I want you to really focus this week on just observing how many messages that you can see through social media, through commercials, billboards, people talking. How many times is alcohol mentioned It's amazing once you just start paying attention. It's literally everywhere. And so let's talk about what's going on and why we've created so much desire in ourselves to overdrink. The first is programming. We have literally programmed ourselves, and we grow up thinking and believing eventually, because our thoughts create our belief systems, right? When we practice thinking certain thoughts over and over, they become deeply embedded beliefs. So we grow up developing these beliefs that alcohol provides relief. It's relaxing, it's sophisticated. Normal people who are in control can drink. It's fun, it's celebratory, it relieves stress, it turns off my brain. I deserve a drink. And so as these thoughts get practiced in our mind over and over and over through commercials, through society, through the adults in our life, through social media, they become deeply embedded belief systems. And when thoughts are combined with emotions, they actually become stronger. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but the reality is our thoughts create our feelings or emotions. And when these thoughts and emotions are repeated over and over, like I said, they become our belief systems. And our belief systems are what leads us to take action. Our actions come from our belief systems, or even our inaction. It's action or inaction comes from our belief systems. And then, of course, we get the results that we do because of that. So the first reason why we overdrink is because we've programmed our minds to believe that alcohol does all these things here. It provides relief, it's relaxing, it's fun, it's celebratory. The second reason why there's so much desire in us to drink is dopamine. So dopamine, as I'm sure you know, is kind of one of those feel-good chemicals. It's actually a neurotransmitter, and it helps control the brain's reward and pleasure centers. So it also actually helps regulate movement and emotional responses as well. So it enables us not only to see rewards, but to take action to move towards them. Here's the deal. Our brains have evolved to essentially put survival at the top of the priority list. We have a primitive part of our brain that is still there and functioning. And what that primitive part of our brain wants to do is, number one, seek pleasure. Number two, avoid pain. And number three, be as efficient as possible. So our brain provides a reward to perpetuate survival. Back in the day when our species needed to survive and continue on, things like sex and warmth and food, connection, achievement, these things needed to take place to perpetuate survival. So our brain provided us with a reward, and that reward is dopamine. So our brain ends up giving us a little bit of dopamine every time we do or did one of these activities. And that created a feedback loop. So we start craving these things when we don't have them. Now I want you to fast forward to today, and we've got all of these artificial pleasures that provide a huge flood of dopamine: cocaine, heroin, alcohol, sugar, porn, shopping, gambling, internet. And our brain, in a sense, says, hey, if a little bit of dopamine is good, then a lot's better. Our brains have not evolved to accommodate the intense amounts of dopamine that are released during these activities. And what the brain actually does, for example, when you drink alcohol, is it's given such an influx of dopamine that it starts trying to accommodate itself so it doesn't get overloaded all the time. So it actually ends up down regulating those dopamine receptors. But the problem is it doesn't downregulate the desire that we've created. So it takes even more alcohol to get the same effect. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have a disease. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your brain. All it means is that you've taught your brain that these substances or the substance of alcohol is super important. And your brain wants to remind you that, yes, I've learned my lesson, that we need this for survival, because your brain links dopamine with survival. So the more that you do this action, the more that you drink the alcohol, the more you repeat it over and over and over throughout your life, the stronger that desire gets, right? The stronger and stronger it gets. Until eventually, for many people, it becomes kind of the only thing that matters. Your desire grows and grows and grows. Your brain ends up prioritizing that above a lot of other things. So what we've done is we have created many habit loops around our drinking behaviors. So this right here is the habit loop. We've got the cue or the trigger. We've got the routine or the habit that we, partake in this case, drinking alcohol, and then the reward. And reward is truly the key to desire. The good news is that desire is completely self-taught. We have programmed our brains to desire alcohol through our thoughts, through the rewards that we get, and through repetition. So you've got the cue or the trigger, which could be an uncomfortable feeling. It could be any sort of experience, like going out to the bar with your friends, or it can be an external trigger or an internal trigger. And then it could even also be a programmed thought, like I need a drink. And then the craving begins, and you give it the drink, and then you're rewarded with this huge flood of dopamine. So your brain has actually learned that, hey, this is something that we repeat and we get rewarded for. Your brain thinks it's associated with survival because it has dopamine involved. So, it thinks that we need to do more of this. And this is why you've created what may seem like an involuntary or overwhelming desire to drink. Does that make sense? I love to use this analogy of a dirt road. I'm sure many of you have probably driven on an unpaved gravel road, and with a lot of traffic and over time, the grooves in the road become rutted. And what happens to the wheels of the car when you travel in that rutted gravel road is they go directly into the ruts. They fall, even if you're driving right next to it. If you get close enough, boom, it falls right into those ruts. And sometimes the ruts are so deep that you could even let go of the wheel, and your car will go down the same course. You'll end up in the same place over time. Honestly, you could almost doze off. As long as the gas pedal's on, you'd still end up going to the same destination, right? And so I like to view our patterns, like our drinking patterns, as a rut. A rut is simply a patterned way of thinking, feeling, behaving that becomes really automatic and routine. It can be a mindless experience. And when you're in a rut, it's truly like you're sleepwalking through the experience. You're thinking, feeling, and acting the same way you've always done in the past, which provides you, of course, the same results. And really, in my mind, a rut is simply just a signal that it's time to wake up. If you don't like where that final destination is taking you, you can literally wake up and you can take that awareness, take that wheel, and get up and out and start a new path. So again, to break it down, the two really, really strong reasons why we've created so much desire and that overwhelming craving for alcohol is our program beliefs plus the strong reward of dopamine that our brain gives us when we drink. We have deeply ingrained unconscious thought processes on repeat. I want a drink. I need a drink. I deserve a drink. And then you reward that thought or trigger with a flood of dopamine. And what we've done is now we've ultimately associated a huge reward system to drinking alcohol. And your brain loves this because you're doing all three. You're seeking pleasure, you're avoiding pain, and you're being really efficient. You're not out of control. You have simply programmed yourself to desire alcohol. And the great news is, if you are the one that programmed yourself to desire, you can also reprogram yourself to unlearn the desire. Isn't that awesome news? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about why it's so hard for us to quit. The reason is because we've got a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. And the definition of cognitive dissonance is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude changes. So this cognitive dissonance that we experience really keeps you stuck in those ruts. It's that self-sabotaging behavior when we say, gosh, I feel like I'm sabotaging myself. I say I want one thing and then I do the other. Here's why. We've got a huge, your mind is kind of like an iceberg, and there's about 5 or 10% that's actually conscious, that we know of, that we're conscious of. There's so many layers to who we are and who we've become. You've got the physical, emotional, energetic, thoughts, beliefs, your soul. There's this huge collection of fragmented parts of our consciousness that are really competing for attention. And because we have 90 to 95% of that underneath the surface that we're kind of unaware of, there are certain parts of us that are in these ruts and these patterned habit loops that really hijack us, and they hijack our conscious brain because there's such a massive part of us that's subconscious. That's when we experience the cognitive dissonance. So to explain it on a little bit more scientific level, although this is a very layman's terms here, so I apologize, I'm not a neuroscientist, but you have the primitive or the lizard brain, right? It's that part that I was just talking about that really prioritizes survival. It wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be efficient. It's the lower survival brain, right? The limbic system. It's the part that generates that fight or flight, the reactivity, the strong desire and emotion. And then we have the higher prefrontal cortex, and this is the part that makes us human. It's a newer, evolved, higher brain. And this is the part that's in charge of executive functioning and self-regulation, intuition. So the lower brain is subconscious. It seeks pleasure, avoids pain, wants to be efficient. The other thing, it's super fast and automatic. That's why a lot of our reactions are coming from the lower brain. If you have habits and you feel like, gosh, I don't even know how I started drinking or when I started drinking or how this third glass of wine got in my hand, it's because that lower brain is in control right now, and it's very fast and automatic. And then you've got the higher brain. And now you have the higher brain that is involved in contemplation and reflection. It thinks. And it also thinks about what it's thinking about. It's the part that makes us human. It's creative, imaginative. It helps us decide ahead of time and plan and make decisions. So we've got these two parts of our brain that are really vying for control. I love the Tale of Two Wolves. I think it illustrates this battle really well. So I'm going to read it to you, but Two Wolves, it's a Cherokee Indian legend, and it illustrates the most important battle of our lives, the one between our good and bad thoughts, or our lower and higher brain. And here's how the story goes. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight's going on inside me, he said to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is evil. He's anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continues, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside of you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." So I love this story and this illustration because the reality is we have two parts of the brain. We have a part of the brain that's essentially addicted to alcohol. Whether it's physical or emotionally, you have a part of your brain that really, really has some very strong patterns of desire around alcohol. And we can call it the addict within or, the addicted brain. But this is the part of the brain that's going to really tempt you and drive you to fulfill its desire to drink. And it tries and makes you feel like you need a drink, especially when it's encountering a trigger. To overcome and unlearn this, we must purposefully retrain the higher, more rational part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex. And in doing so, the cravings and the urges begin to lessen, and you gain back control in those moments. So it's really learning how to tune into your cravings and what's happening in your body and in your mind in that moment. Really learning how to have that internal dialogue, then choosing how to respond to it rather than reacting automatically. And in video number 2, I'm going to be going more into how to do this. But essentially, I love what the grandpa says. He says, or the grandson asks, well, which one wins? And it's the one you feed. So there's ways that we feed the lower brain and there's ways that we feed the higher brain. And because we're stuck in these ruts and these habit loops of drinking, and we don't want to be in those ruts, we know that we have been feeding that lower brain. We have been feeding the primitive part of our brain that really wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be efficient. We've created an immense amount of desire for alcohol using our lower brain to kind of rule the roost. So now we just have to learn how to really come to our center and be grounded and live from our heart and our soul, learn how to feed that prefrontal cortex and allow that to begin to take back the control and let that lower brain kind of take the back seat, because it's not driving the car very well. It's not driving the bus to the destination that you want to go. So we simply have to really recognize what's going on around feeding our lower brain, what's happening with our higher brain, how are they in conflict with each other, and how can we get the control back so that we can really plan and go in the direction that we want to, instead of falling into these ruts of patterns that aren't serving us anymore. So truly learning how to kind of come into alignment with the highest version of ourselves. How do we feed the good wolf? How do we feed the prefrontal cortex? And, we go in my program, we go into a lot more tools and practices to feed that prefrontal cortex, to feed and get into communion with the highest part of you, that divinity within you, and the highest part of your brain, so that you can create that space, and instead of reacting now, you're responding. So really developing a relationship with our internal guidance system and developing that skill so that we can really know what's truly going on for us and where is it coming from? Where is this desire coming from? Is it coming from the lower part or the higher part? So I want to invite you in the next video. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this. We're going to be talking about how do we reprogram our body and our minds so that we can unlearn the desire to drink. Meaning you can literally be in a bar or at a party or whatever the specific really triggers that trigger you to want to drink. You can be around that and literally be unmoved, have no desire, truly have no desire to drink. Now, there's no magic pill. This takes practice and it takes work and it takes some time, but it is absolutely possible. I did it in my life. I totally freed myself from the obsession to drink. I no longer even want to drink. And I have no feelings of deprivation or feeling left out or feeling sorry for myself anymore. Now, I have experienced that in the past, and I've gone through cycles of having feelings like that. And the reason why I did this work and did this research and really practiced these things is because I wanted to let go of all of that. I didn't want to live my life feeling sorry for myself or feeling left out or feeling deprived or feeling like, I wasn't allowed to drink. So in the next few videos, I'm going to show you a few of the practices that I did to unlearn and rewire myself so that I would no longer have the desire to drink. I want to invite you to come along with me, hit video number 2, and if you are inspired and you want to know more, click the link below that says, I want to know more about the 45-day Get Lit coaching program. Or there's another link that says, I want to be a beta tester. We're starting October 15th, and we're kicking off a 45-day Get Lit coaching program that's going to be amazing. And as a community, we're going to just take a step back. We're going to take a little break from alcohol, and we're going to do some experimenting to see what we need to do to rewire our brains so that we're no longer desiring alcohol, and also experimenting, like, how does it feel physically and mentally to go alcohol free for a little bit of time. So click video number 2 to learn how to unlearn the desire to drink. I'm so happy and excited that you're watching this video series, and I hope that you join me on our 45-day Get Lit group coaching program. All right, have a great day, and let's get lit.